Man, it's dark in here. Luckily, we now have Enlightenment. You know, I enjoyed my art history videos, but it's good to be back. So, where we last left off, we saw how Friesland was enjoying their slice of the Dutch Golden Age, witnessed the founding of the University of Frankfurt, met the Frisian Nassaus, and experienced the thrilling northern front of the Franco-Dutch War. As we have previously seen, the United Provinces was a federal country, meaning that the provinces enjoyed lots of autonomy. In Friesland, the governing body consisted of representatives from 4 regions, who together formed the states of Friesland. On top of this was the stadtholder, of which the northern provinces had their own separate one. For simplicity's sake, you can see the stadtholder as a sort of constitutional monarch, whose primary role was being the military commander. In the 17th century, the rest of the provinces rid themselves of their stadtholder. But in 1672, William III got back in the saddle, on which I went into more depth in my Rampjaar video. But he died in 1702 without an heir. Oh, but don't worry. In his will, he had appointed the Frisian stadtholder as his heir for his non-British titles, John William Friso. 2 problems though. The king in Prussia, Frederick I, disputed his succession to the hereditary titles. And Dutch Republicans, longing back to the period of the true freedom, or the first stadtholderless period, blocked his succession to William's stadtholder titles. So after marrying Maria Louise of Hessen-Kassel, getting her pregnant, and getting some prestige by serving in the army, John traveled to The Hague to discuss the inheritance with Frederick. But while crossing the Hollands Diep... Are you sure this is a good idea? The clouds seem kind of dark. It'll be fine. See, the water is very calm. Is that a wave? So, what now? I mean, without an heir he kinda loses, right?
Good news, husband. I give birth to a son. What? Ah, shoot.
Well, baby William here wasn't actually born until 6 weeks after John's death. But with his drowning, the second stadtholderless period endured in the rest of the country, and the territories of Orange and Lingen went to the Prussian king, leaving William with nothing but possessions in Nassau and later the stadtholderships in the north. Speaking of the Prussians, we previously talked about how East Frisia became a satellite state of the Dutch Republic, with garrison troops and all. This was a result of a feud between the Prince of East Frisia and the Oostfriese Landskap, the assembly of the East Frisian estates. The Landskap wanted to protect their traditional rights against the interference of the princes, and then the Dutch intervened and turned the county into basically a satellite state. But during the Rampjaar of 1672, those troops were recalled and they regained some independence for a while. But by decree of the Holy Roman Emperor, upon the death of the childless Prince Charles Edzard in 1744, the county went to the Prussian king Frederick the Great. Now all Friesland had lost any form of independence.
Abelextienne jongen, dit is toch Friesland? Oh, sorry. You realize it's Friesland, right? And not Friesland.
Yeah, I found it out as well, but it seems a bit too late in the series to change that now.
You could always just say it correctly.
Yeah, you're right. Wait, is that Hilbert from the world-famous channel Frisian with Hilbert?
That's me, and I'm here to tell you what happened with the Frisian language in this period. In the Middle Ages, Frisia was like the Wild West of Europe. Instead of the feudal system, it's your count that votes and all that, the free Frisian lands claimed allegiance directly to the Holy Roman Emperor and the Pope alone. They wrote their laws in Old Frisian, and that language flourished along the coast from Holland to Holstein. After the end of the Frisian freedom, around 1500, the language also lost its official status, and Frisian disappeared from the page for hundreds of years. Or did it? Frisian was driven underground, but there are some tantalizing hints as to how the language developed and changed over these centuries. The Middle Frisian period, from around 1550 to 1800, marks an interesting and enigmatic one, playing in the background of the formation of the Dutch Republic and the French period. As new national and ideological identities formed, what did that mean for the Frisians and their language? What was its place going to be in this increasingly globalized world? And how did it rise again, phoenix-like from the ashes, and threaten the idea of a unified Dutch identity? Find out in my video on Frisian with Hilbert. And listen, they didn't do all the Phoenix stuff and put up with speaking French for you to use the Dutch name for the official Frisian province, Friesland. I would say it's a hill to die on, but we don't have any of those, so I'll leave it at that.
So, after John William Frieso's death, Maria Louise acted as the regent for William. She became a beloved figure in the Netherlands. She was very involved in Frisian affairs and interests. She also lived a, relatively, down-to-earth life at what became known as the Prinsessenhof in Lauwert. For all this, she is affectionately remembered as Maaike Mooike, basically meaning Auntie Mary. But this has been a lot of talk about upper class folks. How 17th century of me. Boring. Blah. Let's talk farming. Welcome to Plowing Through History, the program where we talk about historical developments in farming. Today we're in Friesland, dealing with late 18th century developments. And let's start talking about the main Frisian agricultural sector, cattle. Traditionally, the cow in Friesland were red-pied cows. But following repeated outbreaks of rinderpest, the cow population was severely affected, which led to the import of German and Danish cattle, which were often black-pied. Since red fur is a recessive gene, the Frisian cattle got a new coat of paint. This new Frisian cattle breed is the origin of most black cows in the world, like the Holstein Friesian breed from the United States, which has relatively recently displaced it as the most prominent dairy cow in the Netherlands. But still, every once in a while, a cow with red fur is born. The rinderpest did not seemingly affect dairy production, however, as the export of butter and cheeses remained flourishing. In other farming news, horses. Frisian horses are an iconic part of Frisian culture. The breed was very popular as work and war horses. In the 18th century, the breeding of these black horses was regulated, and stud horses needed to be approved by inspectors. And for our final farming topic, potatoes. The marriage feast of the Frisian stadholder William and the English princess Anna led to the introduction of the potato. This crop helped to reduce the poverty of day laborers, as their hunger could now be alleviated with only a small patch of potatoes. The introduction of the potato was pretty new and formative for Friesland. You know what else was? The 18th century in Europe is often called the Age of Enlightenment, with philosophers levying critiques on many cultural traditions and political structures. It saw the introduction of many important concepts to our modern world, for example the separation of powers, the concepts of public opinion, freedom of thought, the social contract, and natural human rights. The period also saw a marked advance in many scientific fields, as the Enlightenment was firmly rooted in the empiricism and the philosophies of natural laws and rationalism of the scientific revolution of the 17th century. The Enlightenment's leading ideas were the belief in progress, the scientific method, education, and social reform. As we'll see, the results of the movement brought forth incredible advancements, but also a large amount of destruction. Friesland actually had a forerunner of Enlightenment thought, Balthasar Bekker, who criticized many superstitions and church practices. He had studied at the University of Friesland we discussed last video. The university was actually a bit of an Enlightenment hotbed, especially the theology faculty. This began with the appointment of Herman Roel as professor in 1685. He tried to link philosophical thought and theology. This caused quite a stir, and he eventually even got censored by the states of Friesland. Even after Roel, the university employed a number of less than orthodox professors. But around 1750, the university started employing an increasing amount of more moderate professors. This was one of the factors that led to the stagnation we saw last time, which eventually saw the university lose its importance. But why was there so much fear for such thought? Well, you see, the last time the established theology came under heavy scrutiny, it caused some minor issues. But alongside the university, Friesland had a large number of autodidacts, especially astronomers. In its waning days, the university tried to justify its continued existence with the presence of so many scholars. They argued that they had contributed to an interest in science among the population. I mean, yeah, it's cope, but they did have a point. There were no natural historical societies in the province, meaning the university could fill the role of disseminating this knowledge. Another contributor to the proliferation of autodidacts was the stadholder William and his wife Anna. As a former student at the University of Friesland, William was fond of and promoted the natural sciences. Two examples of autodidacts that flourished in the 18th century are Willem Loret, a very skilled mathematician mostly known for his revolutionary innovations for dike building, and Ise IJzinga of planetarium fame. Next to established cultural traditions, the traditional political structures were also brought into question. Famously, it was a significant contributor to the outbreak of the American and French revolutions at the end of the century. The Enlightenment championed a spirit of critical examination and argumentation, but it also introduced a concept called public opinion, which directly challenged the divine right of kings. And certain elements within Dutch society were also drawn to these concepts. Willy became the stadholder of Friesland and Stad en Lande in 1711 and 18 respectively. But when the Dutch government lost its goodwill with the people, the Frisian Nassaus were named the sole stadholders of the Netherlands in the 1740s. Beforehand, the hereditariness of the stadholderships had been unofficial, but with the appointment of William IV, it officially became an hereditary title. This had already been the case in Friesland since Henry Casimir II. But this appointment was the end of the Frisian Nassaus. From now on, William and his heir, William, barely visited Friesland. William V and his representatives would prove especially unpopular in the Frisian cities. In the night of 25 September 1781, Johan Derk van der Capellen tot den Pol, a politician from Overijssel, anonymously wrote a pamphlet titled Aan het Volk van Nederland. This pamphlet contained scathing criticism of William V, and was the first time such an inflammatory pamphlet had been spread so far and so fast throughout the country. The pamphlet was filled with Enlightenment ideals, such as all people are born equally and none has a natural right to control another. Ensure the freedom of the press, for she is the only support of your national freedom. Or, there is no freedom in a country where one single person has a hereditary command over a large army, appoints, dismisses or controls regents, controls what can be taught at higher education, and keeps the people ignorant. In essence, it was a plea for freedom of the press, the creation of a representative government, and a call to arms. Starting in Utrecht, many provinces saw the creation of exercitiegenootschappen, militias organized by the middle class to defend themselves from the stadholder's army. The opposition to the stadholder were called the Patriotten, or Patriots. In Friesland, they were led by Koert Lambertus van Bijma. He was a member of a regent family that owned a lot of land in Agritenij and Baradeel and Frenchradeel. Remember, Agritenij is the forerunner of a municipality in Friesland. But he did not belong to the ruling class of Grietman, the governors of the Agritenijen. In fact, he initially sort of joined the Patriots out of spite. See, his family tried to join this upper class by becoming Grietman. First his father in Baradeel and then Koert in Frenchradeel. Both didn't get their appointment thanks to meddling from William V. To add insult to injury, William made Koert pay a hefty fine for, paraphrasing the words from Koert, nothing more than not doing what William wanted him to. Sufficiently angered, Koert entered the scheming zone. With 8 fellows, he formed a secret committee in 1781 and spread pamphlets in the city of Dokkum. These pamphlets promoted arming the citizenry and the formation of exercitiegenootschappen in Friesland. They were received well, and the city brought a motion to create them to the Landdag, the annual assembly of the states of Friesland. Unfortunately for Koert, this motion was rejected. But plot twist, that was his plan. Both the city council and populace of Dokkum were outraged. As a response, the city formed their own free corps and rejected the authority of the states and of William. Inspired, many cities in the province followed Dokkum's example. See, at the time, many Agritenijen in Friesland, one of the wealthiest provinces, no longer wanted to send so much money to the central government. As a response, the government threatened with violence. So many Grietman suddenly saw the worth of having an armed militia, and made these free corps legal. But this age of the free corps was not a long one. See, this movement was an alliance between aristocrats and democrats. The former wanted to curb the influence of the stadholder and gain more autonomy, while the second were mostly from the middle class or landowning farmers and wanted democratizing reforms. A large part of the lower class, on the other hand, were Orangists, meaning they supported the stadholder. The aristocrats had thought to use the free corps and men like Van Bijma to achieve their own ends. However, as the Patriots became more powerful, the aristocratic elements of the movement reconsidered this alliance and sought reconciliation with William. It all came to a head in 1787. 2 years ahead of Paris, the Frisian Patriots tried to pull a tennis court oath. They moved to Friesland and proclaimed themselves as the States of Friesland. The one gathering in Ljouwert declared this action illegal, and a Frisian revolution was drawing near. but the wife of William V, Wilhelmina of Prussia, as the name suggests, was the sister of the Prussian king. And while William was known to be indecisive, his wife was not. Following a diplomatic kerfuffle between the Patriots from Holland and Wilhelmina, the Prussian king intervened. The Prussian army, together with Orangist forces, defeated the Patriot movement. Many Patriots were imprisoned, executed, or had their goods seized. Many chose to avoid retribution and fled to France. Though this early revolution had been avoided, the country did not make any attempts at fixing the underlying issues. Oh, and for their victory in this conflict, Berlin built one of its most iconic monuments. Meanwhile in France, the Patriots lived in banishment. Here they underwent a process of radicalization. They joined the revolutionary clubs, started owning publishers and newspapers, and witnessed the events of the French Revolution. Soon, they would be back. In France, the revolution was a success, and the outbreak of the French Revolution in 1789 was truly one of the most seminal moments in history. Following the mismanagement of several simultaneous crises, the French lower and middle classes revolted against their king. In one fell swoop, one of the most conservative kingdoms of Europe became its most progressive one. At first, the king remained as a constitutional monarch, but then the radical Jacobin faction got into power. And in December of 1792, they got the French king into one of those fad diets. Beheading. In the same year, exiled Patriots made plans for the Netherlands should the United Provinces fall. And in July, the short-lived Batavian Legion was formed out of former members of the Exercitiegenotschappen. Wanting to spread their new revolutionary ideals, the French declared war on the United Provinces in February 1793 as part of the War of the First Coalition. The Batavian Legion joined the French army in their invasion. After initial failures, their fortunes turned around the next year. The French, assisted by their Dutch exiles, beat their opposition in the southern Netherlands with a three-pronged invasion. In the fall of 1794, the French entered the United Provinces, and in 3 weeks Den Bosch fell to the revolutionary forces. The defenders started putting the waterline in action again, hoping it would once more be their saving grace. But do you know what comes after autumn? Winter. And while the waterline started freezing over... Don't worry, men! Our glorious leader William fights with us. Here we shall stand. Here we will beat those radicals. They'll stand no chance against our overwhelming courage. With our brave stadtholder in our midst, there's no way we will... He ran away to Britain. Yeah, so I'm gonna open negotiations. Following these military setbacks, the country decided to surrender. And its revolutionary successor, the Batavian Republic, was born. Surprisingly, the revolution initially went pretty orderly in Friesland. In the interest of keeping things from getting out of hand, the jurist Dame Fokkema had opened negotiations with the French. In fact, the Louter government basically just asked their citizens if they wanted them gone. And with an agreeing response, they just quit. Same thing with the provincial government. Beforehand, the states of Friesland were dominated by the rural nobility, now by scholars and businessmen. Equality, freedom of the press, and freedom of worship were now central tenets of the government. Although not everything was peachy. In 1795, the Patriots plundered the Stadhoudelijk Hof and the tombs of the Frisian Nassaus in Lauwert. They openly burned representations of the old regime and defiled the human remains of the Nassaus. And in 1797, in protest against the forced conscription, riots broke out in Column, which were put down with French aid. Revolutions are often accompanied by governmental chaos. First, the federal system was abolished and the provinces lost their traditional autonomy. Then the provinces were abolished and broken up into 7 new French-style departments. Later, these departments were redrawn again, resembling the original provinces. And in 1806, with the abolishment of the Republic and the creation of a Napoleonic kingdom, along with more department redrawing, East Frisia was added as well, all in 11 years. So the Republic was abolished by Napoleon, who named his brother as King of Holland. And yes, this is the one time the entire country can be called Holland. But Louis Bonaparte turned out to be a Hollandophile. Annoyed by his Dutch-loving brother, Napoleon incorporated the kingdom into the French Empire in 1810. The following year, he closed the University of Friesland. Once a hotbed of the Enlightenment in Friesland, it had now experienced a period of stagnation. 3 years later, Napoleon was defeated, and Europe now sought to restore the old order. But that is for another time. Unsurprisingly, the French period was consequential for the Netherlands. It also saw the introduction of many things we take for granted, like the metric system, house numbers, and mandatory surnames for everyone. Although the country had already been relatively tolerant of other religions, the country was now more or less officially secularized and granted a real freedom of religion. After the fall of Napoleon, the son of William V returned not as stadholder, but as the first king of the Netherlands. Additionally, the new unitary centralized government of the Netherlands remained. This was the end of the autonomy of provinces like Friesland. A massive thank to Hilbert for this collab. Maybe we'll see more of him in the future, who knows? And don't forget to check out his video. Next video in the series, we'll see how Friesland deals with another revolution. Buckle up, because it's time for the stinking, polluting, producing, industrial revoluting. But in the meantime, you can be a true scholar and philosopher by leaving a like, comment, and clicking that subscribe button. If you want to be notified when the next video is uploaded, then don't forget to click the bell icon. Have a good one and see you all next time.